Testing, testing.
Perfect.
Okay, we got you loud and clear.
Awesome. I'll pivot to you in 1 second. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Welcome, everyone. This is our town hall meeting for Pukalani and Upcountry Maui, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us this evening, because we know you all have busy schedules, but this is one of the biggest issues facing Hawaii, and we appreciate your involvement. And we'll give you a little bit of background about who we are and what we're going to be talking about tonight. We have some special guests, but I want to just wish you a happy Passover, Easter, or Earth Week, whatever you're celebrating in the season of renewal. And we appreciate you being here. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Uncle Kimokeo, who's say an opening oli for us to set the tone.
Kau ka holo kia hi manuola I poele I kawahe no he kana hele no he ai kamakani luhau pua he pua oni ke kanaka he me ala haole ia oe mai kaua he ane he ai ke kanaka e komo maloko he hana ya heva I ka waha he ano ka ukula o ka wae
He aye ke kanaka he kumu maloko he anaya wakawa ayano kaukala o kale yo he ano e valeno ae. Hallelujah, oi, no Maui.
Mahalo. Thank you. That was beautiful. And thank you also to Anela, Uncle Kimokeo's the executive director of his group. We really appreciate you all joining and setting this. I'll turn it over to Sierra.
Yeah, mahalo, Uncle Kimokeo. So here on tonight's call, we have our executive director, Stuart Coleman. We have our program manager, which is Christina Comfort, our senior project coordinator, which is Yoko Snyder, and then me, myself, Sierra, as the project coordinator. Jackie Orsa is our operations coordinator, and then another managing director who isn't able to make it tonight is John Anner. We are the WAI team. And our mission is to protect water quality, reduce sewage pollution, and restore healthy watersheds by providing innovative, affordable, and eco-friendly solutions to waste and wastewater management for all people. We help Hawaii's homeowners and communities manage the difficult process of upgrading cesspools and failing septic systems across the state to new systems that are affordable, efficient, and better for the environment. We have 5 pillars that we aim to, that are our goals, and they're innovative technology, financial resources, policy advocacy, outreach and education, and pilot projects.
Mahalo, Sierra. And tonight we are lucky to have our legislators here. We have Senator Lynn DeCoit joining us and Representative Kyle Yamashita, and who will be, I'll ask to say just a couple of words to kind of open this up. And then for our panel presentation later, we also have John Astilla, who's a farmer and conservationist on Maui, and the team from Ridge to Reefs, who will be introducing themselves and our team. But at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Senator DeCoit and to say a few words, and then followed by Representative Yamashita.
So aloha, everybody, country. I wanted to say thank you first for joining us. We've been struggling with the conversion of cesspools to septic. We know there's many challenges out there. Going forward, it's about protecting our water resources. And while we look forward to solutions on trying to help, whether it be financial solutions as well as environmental issues that we're tasked with, I think this is a good start for us to hear both from individuals and residents within Upcountry. One, you guys are the number one priority in areas that have been impacted on the environmental issues due to cesspools. My concern is cost-wise, what it's gonna cost everybody. So I can appreciate the WAI team bringing some of those things to the forefront. Know that while we are working still at legislation and finish off session and conference, that we still have an ongoing bill that is posed to try and seek some of the resources that we can help going forward. Again, we here at the legislature need to prioritize is it, our environment that we're concerned about, and how much will we put behind there going forward, working with you guys as individuals in conversion. And of course, the WAI team will share with you folks more on when that conversion is expected to be done by, which is in another 28 years. Again, it's really about costs. And for me, my question is what happens if the individuals cannot afford to then convert over? We can't just say, oh, we'll penalize or fine you guys. But myself too is here just to listen what's being put on the table and to hear what's coming back from you guys as a community as well as the WAI team. So thank you for allowing me to be here tonight. I appreciate the interaction with everybody. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'll pass it to Representative Yamashita.
Yep. Hello, everybody, and it's hopefully one day we'll be able to do all these things live again. But I guess, and I think it's coming on soon. But anyway, I echo what Senator Coit mentioned, that we have concern. There's a bill moving, and we're hoping to learn a few things from the WAI team and see if there are options for us in our community. So I look forward to that. Thank you.
Mahalo.
And so to start this meeting off with some participation from you all, we will start with a short poll, which is anonymous, and I'm gonna launch it right here into your Zoom window. Should pop up right now. And essentially we're asking you all about background information, what you have heard so far about cesspools and wastewater in Hawaii and in Pukalani and Upcountry specifically. And I see people are already responding, but I'll read out the questions and answers. There are 2 questions total, and you have to answer both in order to submit. The first question reads, do you think that cesspools pose a problem in Hawaii? The answer possibilities are yes, no, or not sure. And for question 2, the question is complete this sentence. I've heard that, and you can select multiple. Either sewer will come to Pukalani and take care of my cesspool. Number 2, I do not have to worry about my cesspool until 2050. I need to convert my cesspool to a better system, or none of the above. And we have about 63% successfully participate already. Wow, you all are very fast. I appreciate you all taking part in this poll. And we'll give maybe 10 more seconds before we close it and move on. All right, 5 seconds. Okay, 80% participation. That is really good. Oh, 83, perfect. Got the last one in right under the wire. And to share the results real quick, I'll kick it over to Sierra.
All right, so for the first question, you can see that there's, do you think cesspools pose a problem in Hawaii? And 68% said yes, 28% said no, and 4% said not sure. Complete this sentence. I've heard that looks like 48% said I need to convert my cesspool to a better system. 40% said I do not have to worry about my cesspool until 2050. which is a valid response. None of the above, 28% said, and 8% said sewer will come to Pukalani and take care of my cesspool. So this is good information for us to have, and we're going to answer some of these unknowns in our presentation right now.
Thank you, Sierra. Go ahead, Stuart.
Thank you so much. So, we like to start this presentation by making sure that people get the distinction between cesspool and septic system, because there's a lot of confusion. A cesspool is basically just a hole or pit in the ground that is perforated on the sides, usually with bricks or tiles, and is open at the bottom. So all of the waste from a house goes into this open pit with no treatment whatsoever, and then percolates down into the ground and eventually into the groundwater. So it doesn't take care of any of the pathogens or nutrients, and there's no treatment involved. On the other hand, there is a septic system, which is enclosed tank. So all the effluent, from a house, or the influent from a house goes into this tank, which is completely sealed, and the solids settle at the bottom, and then the liquids filter out. So there's minimal treatment going on, but then it goes out to a dispersal system called a leach field or a drain field. And that's where all of the treatment happens in the soil. The microorganisms in the soil eat all the pathogens. And so that's a key distinction that we need to begin with. Now, just to give you a little background, because we have our legislators here and some county council members who've joined us. We appreciate, I saw Councilmember King in the audience. We appreciate you all joining. In 2015, Act 120 passed, and that banned the construction of new cesspools and offered homeowners $10,000 tax break to upgrade their systems. Unfortunately, that tax break expired in 2020. But the next year, and I've been working on this issue for about 10 years, and we had a big coalition of groups, the Surfrider Foundation, Sierra Club, and probably 10 other groups. We passed Act 125, which mandated the upgrade of all cesspools by 2050. And DOH created a priority upgrade report. The next year, they passed Act 132, and that was the creation of the Cesspool Conversion Working Group, which I serve on with about 15 others. And we're wrapping up this year. So we will be coming with a list of recommendations and reports to the legislature. And then right now we're working to pass, as I mentioned in the chat, a bill that would offer grants, assistance, HB 2195, to help low and moderate income homeowners with the cost of conversion. So that's just kind of an update. I'll pass it. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So now I'm just going to go through a little bit about what's going on with cesspools all throughout Hawaii, and then we'll zoom into this area that we're looking at in Upcountry Maui tonight. So in 2017, there was a project done by the Hawaii Department of Health that designated different areas of Hawaii for different priorities in terms of how urgent it is to convert the cesspools. So the original priority areas are labeled priority 1, 2, or 3. Priority 1 means that there's a significant and known risk to water resources at the time that those priority areas were defined. So this could be documented impacts to drinking water, impacts to public health if there's pollution in the nearshore ocean, and documented pollution to ecosystems. A priority 2 area is an area where there are potential impacts to drinking water resources, and a priority 3 area is where there are potential impacts to ecologically sensitive waters, such as coral reefs. Priority 4 means that the impacts weren't identified yet, but there are new prioritizations coming out soon. So we'll be able to talk more about the other cesspools around Maui besides just this area in Upcountry. But for now, Maui's priority area is a priority 1 in Upcountry. So this includes areas from Haiku, Makawao, all the way up through Kula. And this is about 12,200 cesspools that exist in this area. And these cesspools discharge about 7.9 million gallons per day of effluent into the ground. And the upcountry area of Maui is a priority 1 area because there's documented pollution to drinking water wells in this region, which I'll show some more data on in just a minute. Zooming in a little bit, you can see just a little bit closer up of where all those cesspools are located. There are, in the priority area, just the priority 1 area, there are 7,400 cesspools discharging 4,400,000 gallons per day of effluent. So that's where the drinking water resources are being impacted, is from all of these cesspools, these thousands of cesspools discharging untreated waste into the ground every day. We can go to the next slide. So there are lots of different types of health and environmental risks that wastewater pollution from cesspools pose, both on the public health and on the environmental side of things. So kind of in general, this isn't just in upcountry, but all across Hawaii, some of the public health issues that occur are when cesspool pollution gets into drinking water. It can elevate the nitrate levels in drinking water. And this is related or associated with an increased cancer risk for certain types of cancers, including bladder cancer and colorectal cancer. There's also a risk of interacting with pathogens in the water. So if you go swimming down at the beach and there's a lot of cesspools in the nearshore environment or in the streams that are running into that beach area, there's a risk of encountering pathogens in the water and getting sick. So that could look like gastrointestinal illnesses, that could look like getting an ear infection or an eye infection or skin infection from those pathogens. On the environmental side of things, those same nutrients that can cause pollution in your drinking water also are bad for the coral reef. So nutrients going into the reef causes invasive algae to overgrow the corals. And the sewage pollution also contains all kinds of other pollutants, toxins, and pathogens that can lead to increased coral disease and reduced coral cover. So overall, it's really bad for the coral reef ecosystem. You can see in that picture on the bottom, that's an example of a coral reef that's being overgrown by invasive algae. There's also contaminants of emerging concern, which are chemicals that are present in wastewater. These can include things like sunscreens and pharmaceuticals and chemicals found in plastics that are getting into all of our water, and that has, kind of unknown impacts for how does that affect people in the long term? How does that affect ecosystems in the long term? But we are starting to learn enough that, we have concerns about many of these types of chemicals. So I just want to mention also that sewage waste is going into the environment all throughout Hawaii. And if you're concerned about this, there is another initiative going on with the Department of Land and Natural Resources Division of Aquatic Resources, DAR. And DAR is working on the Holomua 30 by 30 program, which is basically an effort to protect or manage 30% of the coastlines and nearshore waters by 2030. There's multiple pillars to their initiative, including place-based planning, pono practices, monitoring, and protection and restoration. And WAI is working with DAR to help advise on how land-based pollution affects nearshore ecosystems and what we can do about it, especially from the perspective of sewage pollution. So now I'm going to jump into a little bit of information about the cesspools in Maui. Specifically, we'll focus on this upcountry area and just show you a couple maps of where the problems are and what that looks like. So this first map is showing cesspools. So anywhere there's a colored dot on the map indicates there's a cesspool there. And these are cesspools that are colored by how close they are to a drinking water well. So if it's red, they're very close to a drinking water well. And if it's green, they're not as close. So you can see there's several different areas in the Priority 1 region in Upcountry Maui that have lots of cesspools very close to drinking water wells. So those are definitely areas of extra concern. This is a similar map. This is showing cesspools near streams. So again, every dot is a cesspool and the color indicates how close it is to a stream. So if it's red, it means it's very close to a stream. So there's lots and lots of streams all throughout Maui, and you can see the areas where there's really dense amounts of cesspools that are close to stream environments. So those are, more of a concern for environmental reasons, like you might encounter sewage pollution if you go into the stream or if you go into the ocean where the stream feeds in. And those are also high areas of concern. So the real issue of focus in Upcountry Maui is the drinking water pollution. Since there was a study done by Department of Health that they took water samples from many different wells throughout Upcountry Maui and found that a lot of them had elevated levels of nitrate. So you can see the wells that they sampled are the circles on this map. And again, red means higher, red is worse. So those areas that have red and orange colored wells, those wells are actually have high levels of nitrate that are of concern for human consumption. And I do want to point out that some of the nutrient input is from cesspools and some is from agriculture. But as you can see on the next slide, most of these wells actually have a mix of on-site disposal systems, that's what OSDS stands for, and agricultural sources. So we do know there's cesspool pollution coming into these drinking water aquifers. There are also a couple wells that had primarily cesspool pollution as the main source. And the scientists were able to use a couple different methods to determine where the nutrients are coming from. So we could track it back to cesspool pollution. So this is really, really kind of points the finger at cesspools as being, risky for human health in this region because the nitrate levels are getting elevated above an advisable level for human consumption.
Thank you, Christina. So to talk a bit more about technological solutions to this cesspool problem that we have, there are certain scales at which you can approach this problem, and we're going to address all of them here. And one of the most ubiquitous questions that we get is, what about county sewer? And if you look at this map, you can see Pukalani in the bottom left. The closest municipal sewer is located at Hali'imaile, which is a few miles away. And the further you are away from any wastewater treatment plant, the more expensive and time-consuming it is to construct sewer pipes to go there. So the distance between Pukalani and Hali'imaile sort of makes it not feasible to connect, unfortunately, to that treatment plant there. And I will also say that gravity sewer, which is usually what is used for county municipal sewer, is not ideal for many cases because they have issues with infiltration, and they use very big pipes that are very obtrusive, and they also lead to monthly sewer bills for anybody who is connected. There's also private sewer, which is similar, except that it is owned and operated by a private company instead of the county. There is actually one in Pukalani. It's called Pukalani Wastewater Treatment Plant. It's run by Hawaii Water Services. And you can see on the map the areas that are served by it currently in green, dark green. It has a capacity of 400,000 gallons per day, which is approximately 400 homes. And in 2020, it had a flow estimate of 186,000 gallons per day. So that means, based on the decisions of this private business that runs this plant, they may allow more houses to connect to it in the future. But again, this is a private company. They will do what they deem best for their business interests. And we cannot 100% rely that that is going to happen. But it is an option that exists, and so we want to present it. Now, going to a smaller scale, going down to individual home scale, we get a lot of questions of, what about septic systems? What about composting toilets? Because those are two options that are usually very well known. Everybody's heard of that. And we like to say that septic systems not only require lots of space, they have a relatively large footprint usually, and they also don't treat nutrients. So they do settle out some of the heavier particles and the rest goes to the leach field, but nutrients such as nitrogen, nitrate, which Christina was talking about, and phosphorus are remaining in the water. And that is really a lackadaisical approach to wastewater treatment. It's not taking out all the things that need to be taken out. And composting toilets are, while they do work for some people that are willing and able to put in the heavy maintenance and operation efforts that are required to run them properly, they're still not encouraged, for example, by the Department of Health, because the composted waste is still raw, untreated human waste, and it can be hazardous to operate, and the composted waste cannot be used in agriculture according to the current laws. So what else is out there? Let's go from small to big. Smallest scale that we partner with at WAI is on the individual toilet scale, and we partner with a company from Norway called Cinderella. They make incineration toilets, which is exactly what you think it is. It incinerates the waste after you use the toilet to a pathogen-free, odorless ash. And they are waterless, meaning they don't have to be hooked up to a water line or a sewer line. It's dealt with all within the toilet. And this ash only needs to be emptied for a single family about once a week. You can put it right in the trash. And we're working on making it legal to use the ash for fertilizer in your yard. We have already installed over 25 toilets across the islands, and the people that are using them are telling them that it's working really well. It's ideal for ag use, for example, and off the grid in the propane powered version. And the electric powered version is really good for existing homes and can also be combined with a gray water system to make the best use of the water resources, because gray water can be used for irrigation. And I'm not going to get too deep into it, but here's what this could look like. You could have a kitchen, small kitchen black water system with a small septic tank and a leach field. The toilet waste is dealt with the Cinderella toilet, and the gray water from shower and laundry goes to a mulch basin where it is used for irrigation. In terms of retrofitting existing septic systems, we partner with upstart startup on Oahu here called Vaihome, which is piloting a passive aerobic system that is based on algae. And they essentially look like solar panels that you put on top of a septic tank, and they treat the wastewater to a higher standard. But that is, like I said, still in the pilot phase, and we're very excited about the potential, but it's not for sale yet. But what is for sale and what has been proven time and time again are what we like to call enhanced septic solutions. So they look similar to septic, they work similar, but they produce this beautiful nitrogen removal that is so important, especially if you're close to drinking water well. So to go from left to right, we have one example is a biofilter, and we partner with a company called Elgin that make these. It's essentially a septic system, septic tank and a leach field, but below the leach field is another layer of wood chips, and the wood chips allow certain types of bacteria called aerobic bacteria to thrive there. And those bacteria are really good at treating wastewater before it enters the ground. Similarly, nature-based system you can see on the bottom here is a constructed wetland. And we partner with the awesome nonprofit Ridge to Reefs, which will present here in a second about it. And they call it the Bioreactor Garden. And you'll hear all about it in a second, but they're also producing aerobic treated wastewater. And then on the top right, you can see an aerobic treatment unit, which is sort of the mechanical approach with electricity that we partner with a company called FujiClean that make these. And this uses fine air bubbles that are created with a mechanical air pump to produce the environment in which aerobic bacteria can thrive. And all of these then use a leach field also. And we'll pass it over to the Ridge to Reefs team.
Aloha, everyone. My name is Fal Mantha, and I'm the Director of Agriculture and Sustainability at Ridge to Reefs. Ridge to Reefs is a nonprofit organization. We work throughout the Chesapeake Bay, as well as the Caribbean and the Pacific, including several islands in Hawaii, as well as American Samoa and Palau. And again, our focus is primarily on implementing nature-based solutions to reducing land-based sources of pollution, whether it's wastewater or whether that's from agriculture. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is just a slight overview of some of our projects. I think for the context of this conversation, it would make sense to focus on more of our wastewater stuff. So This slide is just to really show the various solutions we have, which can be applied at a different scale. So on the bottom left of the slide, you can see that's our bioreactor garden. We'll get a little more into that later. At the top of the slide, you can also see a pilot site. Actually, our partner, John Estilla, is going to be joining us later on in the question and answer session. We partnered with him across from the wastewater reclamation facility in Kihei, where we are essentially testing vetiver grass and soon other species, essentially to test the agricultural reuse of treated wastewater in that context. Similarly, in the bottom right of the slide, you can see a larger system which we built in Puerto Rico that is actually a 27-room hotel. So the key just being that these sorts of nature-based solutions can be applied at various scales. Next slide, please. And then a little bit more about what we're talking about today is we're all working under the USDA Rural Development's Technical Assistance and Training Grant. And essentially, we're focused on 5 priority areas across the state. And it's our goal to provide information to interested parties that can be, wastewater professionals, community members, kind of septic installers and septic pumping people, just really convening people at different levels throughout the community to inform people and identify solutions for alternatives to what we have today. Again, our primary goal is to provide technical assistance and training, and our target audience is NGOs, stakeholders, and other community members. Next slide, please. This is just a slide to show kind of as you can see on the left, there's a sewer map of the areas which are currently sewered. And then on the right, we can see some of the challenges that we often encounter, whether it's in Pukalani or other areas of country. These are some of the soil types that you see. And basically, in terms of the suitability of soils for septic absorption, some of the soils are not ranked very high. They're all classified as very limited by the NRCS's soil web survey. So that's just keeping in mind, sometimes there are challenges with soil characteristics, but in some cases they can be addressed and we can implement alternate solutions to those. Next slide, please. Here's a few more detailed pictures of our systems. As you can see, they can be pretty visually visually pleasing or aesthetically pleasing. The picture on the left just shows our bioreactor garden. That system was configured for a 3-bedroom system or 600 gallons a day. On the top right, you can see the 27-room system we built for Puerto Rico. And again, it's just something that can be pretty aesthetically pleasing. The owners of that particular lot really commented on how they liked the look of it. And in fact, they looked at it as kind of a net benefit to just when they're flowering, there's hibiscuses and other species in there where it's pretty pleasing in addition to serving the treatment that we need. And then the bottom right, you can see our site from Kihei, where again, it's pretty aesthetically pleasing, and we're able to get rid of the equivalent of close to 30,000 gallons a day with that system. Next, please. These are some of the results from our study. We have about 87% removal of total nitrogen, over 80% phosphorus removal, 96% removal of suspended solids, and around a 15 to 20% volume reduction as well. And the key here is that we're not using electricity. These are all essentially driven by gravity and made using recycled materials and local materials, ultimately kind of lowering the cost of these systems. And also what we hope will foster local circular economies. We can source these materials from local contractors, local businesses, not have to import the inputs that we need to provide this treatment. That's probably one key advantage of a nature-based solution. Next slide, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Fel. I appreciate you also staying up very late. You're zooming in from the East Coast, so really, really appreciate that.
Thank you.
And Stuart, did you want to say something?
No, I just wanted to also just highlight the results that they achieved, we worked with Ridge to Reefs on this demonstration project and pilot project, and they were astounding results. So this is all that nitrogen we were talking about, that pollution, nutrient pollution. It reduced it better than many of the systems that have to be maintained, twice a year, and you have utility costs. So these are passive, and you can just set it and forget it. So it's really impressive.
Thank you.
That's right. And we're gonna launch into poll number 2 out of 3. This one is also anonymous. It's a poll about demographics, and it is required since we are running these town halls partly on federal grant funding. Please, again, you did a fantastic job in the first poll, so keep up the good work. Please do complete all 5 questions, because that is the only way you're able to hit the submit button. And I will read the questions out. Question number 1, is English your primary language? Yes or no? Question number 2, do you consider yourself a person with limited English proficiency, meaning those that have a limited ability to read, speak, write, or understand English? Question number 3, would you benefit from English language translation assistance to another language? Yes or no? Question 4, if you answered yes to question 3, what language would you require translation assistance for? Spanish, Tagalog, Hawaiian, or other, which you could specify in the chat, or I answered no. And last question, question 5, please indicate your race/ethnicity, which again is required for compliance with the USDA. And I see 81% already participated. Thank you all very much. And we don't have to read the results of this one. I'll give 5 more seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you all very much. Ending the poll here and hitting it over to Stuart.
Thank you so much, Yoko. And remember, that's no reflection on grammar. Those questions about English as first language. So I wanted to talk about community scale wastewater systems, because with 88,000 cesspools across the state, we can do this one by one, individual wastewater systems, or we can also try community scale wastewater systems, or sometimes referred to as decentralized or packaged plants. This is the middle ground in between like centralized sewer, which can be very expensive and disruptive, and individual wastewater systems. And they can range anywhere from between 20 and 200 homes. And we think this is a real opportunity to make Hawaii a leader, to demonstrate a circular economy approach at a really manageable scale that's more affordable, and we have resource recovery and reuse. So in order to set one of these up, one of these community sewer projects, you can create a sewer improvement district, SID, or a community facilities district. And these can be done a number of ways. It varies, but either 50% of the people in a local neighborhood or community can do this. A board of local, if you live in a development, can decide to do this, or the county council can vote to have a certain area becoming a sewer improvement district. And the good news is that there's funding from the recently passed Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, also known as the bipartisan infrastructure law. And homeowners still pay a part of the cost through special tax or sewer fees. And this is a really good way for a community to solve infrastructure problems together. So if any of you want to work with us, please let us know, because we can help you kind of work to set that up. And we have a number of partners that were referenced earlier. And what this is we're just trying to introduce new technology to Hawaii from around the world, looking at innovative system. And we've honestly looked at hundreds of companies, and we've just chosen 7 partners that we think would be the best for Hawaii and more affordable. One of them is Cambrian, and this is a containerized community scale wastewater treatment system that, as you can see in the picture, can be shipped to Hawaii. So it's ready to go. and it can be above ground. So you don't have all the infrastructure work and cost of building a permanent facility. And so this produces water that is suitable for water recycling and our goals, as part of our statewide goals in irrigation. And there are no upfront costs. They have a sanitation as a service model. So you pay per gallon of wastewater treated. So what they would do is take the wastewater from a community. Each member would pay a monthly fee. It goes to their facility, and then they produce reuse water for irrigation. And we have, in Malaya, we're working for folks. Travis Liggett is on the call tonight with us. We're working with communities across Maui to try to make this a model for the rest of the state and get us off of injection wells and really recycle a lot of that water instead of wasting it. Another company that we work with is called Biomass Controls. I met these folks at the Bill and Melinda Gates Reinvented Toilet Expo in Beijing, which sounds very odd, in 2018, but this is, the Gates Foundation has spent like $200 million trying to provide innovative and more affordable systems for people across the world. And the reason they're doing this is, we have to remind ourselves that around the world, poor sanitation is one of the leading causes of death and illness and disease. And so there are simple problems that we can face. And even though it's much bigger problem in developing countries, there are still issues. In places like Alabama, excuse me, they have, they're seeing hookworm come back, and diseases that we eliminated due directly because of poor sanitation. So what this company does is it turns the solid waste into biochar. You can combine sewage waste and like the sludge from pumpers with ag waste and green waste, and you can produce energy and also biochar. We'll go to the next slide. And biochar basically takes the dried sludge, which is not quite dried actually at that time, and using high heat, low oxygen, turns it into biochar, which can be used as a soil amendment. This is a process called pyrolysis. And the great thing about this, and we have Mike Annett on the phone, who is working to start a company in Maui to do this, is, you can, the solids that are produced often at a regular wastewater treatment plant, we've tried recycling before, but they still have pathogens in them. They still smell. They still have, a lot of nutrients, contaminants of emerging concern, PFAS, PFOS, and pharmaceuticals. With this process, you eliminate almost all of that. And so they're odorless ash it's not ash, actually, it's biochar that can be used as a soil amendment. And this can be used for a carbon sink to help us meet our carbon goals. And it can also be used as a soil amendment, helps with soil erosion, and can absorb, if you put it in like biofilters or socks in front of storm drains, it can really cut out and filter a lot of the most harmful toxic chemicals, including nitrogen and phosphorus, but also heavy metals. So we're really excited about introducing these companies to Hawaii. And then the final company is, those two companies take care of the solid waste and the liquid waste. But how do you get that without using sewer? Especially in places like Upcountry Maui, where you have like really rocky terrain, steep slope. Doing sewering on 2-lane roads would just be incredibly disruptive. And so we recently partnered with a company called Arinco that uses small little piping. You can use PVC piping, and they put, what is like a septic tank in the yard, but this is called liquid-only sewer. And so it's pressurized liquid-only sewer. So it takes all that waste, but only pumps the liquids, and the solids settle at the bottom. And you can use this with small piping, and then barely trenched beneath the surface, you hook up to a larger conveyance system and piping, PVC pipe, that can either take it to the nearest sewer line or sewer treatment plant, like you have already in Upcountry Maui, in Pukalani. And so this is going to just save so much money in conveyance costs, getting that sewage where it needs to go. Or you can create a separate package, decentralized facility that it goes to. And then this tank would just be pumped out every 3 to 5 years. And they also have a sanitation as a service model where you pay, pennies per gallon for treatment. So our vision for the state of Hawaii is really this circular economy, because right now it's important to realize that when we have these massive wastewater treatment plants, like we have in Kahaluu and around the state in Lahaina, we pay lots of money to pipe and pump all that water to these plants. It's hundreds of millions of dollars for these plants to treat it and to build all that, infrastructure. And then we just pump it out to sea, and the solids are trucked to landfills. It is so wasteful. It is completely counterintuitive. It served its purpose for a time, but now we have better systems. So we could recycle all of the water through Cambrian's technology, get it to farmers to use for irrigation or fire breaks or agroforestry. And then we can use companies like Biomass Controls to turn that solid waste into biochar, so you don't have to truck it to landfills where it can leach into the soil and into the groundwater eventually. And you can use it for stormwater filtration or a soil amendment to help us grow our crops and become more self-sufficient. So this is the vision that we have. And Maui is really, on the forefront in many ways of this. If we can get a system going in Maalaea, we can show how this works. But for individual homeowners with individual wastewater systems, right now we have grants and loans from the USDA Rural Development Office. There's section 502 and 504. And I know we're giving you a lot of information. It's like a fire hose, but we will be sending you a copy of this recording and the slides so that you can really go through it. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. But the amount of loans has gone up, and so has the amount of grants. And it's partly thanks to the bipartisan infrastructure law that's going into effect. And so Maui is an eligible, Upcountry Maui is an eligible area. And you can see the link there, but again, we'll be sending this to you. We can try to help with applications, but the thing that I want to emphasize the most is we have an opportunity to access a lot of money through this new law, the infrastructure law that passed. And it could create a lot of jobs for Hawaii. But if we don't act on this, we will not receive it. Some of it goes to the states automatically, but a lot of it are competitive grants. And right now, we're not really poised to compete for those grants. So we could lose out on hundreds of millions of dollars. So if we look at this next slide, we have, we need funding for cesspool conversions. And the EPA has their Clean Water State Revolving Fund. And that would have to go to DOH, the Department of Health at the state level, and then to the individual counties. Kauai is piloting a program right now to try to do this, but we really need the Department of Health to step up more. They've been a little lackadaisical in their approach in accessing these loans, but we will lose out. Honestly, this is a once in a generation opportunity to access tens and potentially hundreds of millions of dollars in federal money that could help homeowners with the conversion costs. But if we don't act on it, right now, the burden is on individual homeowners to pay for it. So we need homeowners to kind of step up and talk to their legislators at the county and state level to say, hey, look, we need you to apply for this money and access this. And we need DOH to do this because it will really help all of us so much. Individually, homeowners with the cost of conversion, but across the state, it will be an infusion of money and workforce development like we've never seen before. At this point, I will pass it back. Well, I'll mention the earmark deliverables. The good news and what I'm trying to convey here, if I haven't beat this horse already, is that we just applied last year to get an earmark congressionally directed spending item from the federal government. And we helped bring in $1 million to do a work for water program. So we're developing our workforce to focus on this issue and to train people, especially young people, displaced workers. We can train them to do this kind of work. And these are green jobs. Unlike construction and tourism jobs, there's not the highs and lows and boom and bust of the construction industry. We can create thousands of jobs this way that'll be really permanent. And so we partnered with Pictor to do this. So this will be rolling out in the fall. And this is the kind of thing that we can be bringing more federal money in to do this kind of work. I'll pitch it back to Yoko.
Thank you. Yes, the deliverables that we're going to be producing with this 1 million is to train 150 professionals in becoming installers of on-site wastewater inspectors, operators, maintainers, designers, and advanced manufacturers. So this is only the beginning. And hopefully in the very near future, on-site wastewater and wastewater in general is going to be a huge, huge workforce in Hawaii. And we'll go to our survey. Number 3, the last survey. So really give it up on this one. It'll be anonymous yet again. And there are 5 questions. Keep it up as you have earlier. Question number 1, what barriers exist for homeowners in Pukalani and Upcountry Maui to convert their cesspools? Select all that apply. So you can apply, select multiple here. Cost of converting, construction impact on property, don't know how to start the process, don't feel it's important, or none of the above. Question 2.
Like the old telethons, let's light up the phones if we could, if you could respond. I'm not seeing any responses right now. Can you all see the questions?
There you go. First ones are rolling in.
This really helps us kind of gauge public knowledge and interest and priorities. So it really is important. If you could participate in this poll, we'd appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. Question 2, are you concerned about human health and environmental problems posed by cesspools? Yes, no, or need more info. Number 3, what value would be the biggest motivator to convert your cesspool? Select all that apply. Clean environment, public health, improved property value, regulation, and law abiding, or none of the above. And if you put none of the above, feel free to put in the chat what would motivate you. Number 4, if up to $20,000 in financial aid was available, would you be more willing to convert your cesspool in the next 1 or 3 years? Yes, no, maybe, or I do not own a home with a cesspool. And last but not least, complete this sentence. Select all that apply. I am concerned about water quality as it relates to sewage for swimming and coral reef health, or I don't have water quality concerns related to sewage pollution. Awesome job, everybody. Already 66% participated. We'll give it another 10 seconds. Wow, 75, 78%. Awesome job, everybody. Another 5 seconds. 4,
There
3,
we go.
2, 1. And thank you all so much. Wow, perfect. Just under the wire. 90% participated. Phenomenal job. We see that if I share the results here, I'll go quickly. Biggest barriers are the cost of converting and the construction impact, while some also don't know how to start the process. Number 2, 70% are concerned about human health and environmental problems. Question 3, almost all pretty equal. Biggest motivators here. And again, if you said none of the above, please let us know what could be a motivator. If up to $20,000 were available, 63% said they would be more willing to convert, And last question, drinking water is the biggest concern, rightfully so. But coral reef health, swimming and fishing and traditional practices are also voted to be concerns. And 7% say they don't have water quality concerns. Thank you all very much. And I'll pass it to Christina.
Good, thank you. So I think at this point, we're going to, right here is just a list of a few resources. So we'll send out these slides to everyone who's attending the meeting. And you can access all these different types of resources. This includes all kinds of information from the USDA, from the Department of Health, our website, mycleanwater.org, and also some information from the University of Hawaii's various programs that deal with water quality. So at this point, we're ready to open up for question and answer. So if you have questions, you can either put them in the chat or put up your hand. And we do have one question that came up in the chat that I didn't get a chance to answer yet. So we can maybe kick it off with that one. And just remember, you can ask questions to the legislators. You can ask questions to anyone on the panel, and we'll try to match you to the right person to best answer your question. So to start, Kathy Suzuki Kitagawa asked that HB 2195 does not include qualifying income amounts or grant funding amounts. How will those amounts be determined and calculated? And just a reminder, HB 2195 is the grants program for cesspool conversion for low and mid-income homeowners that's currently being debated in the legislative process and hopefully will pass. A $10,000 grant doesn't help much when the cost to convert is $30,000 to $50,000. So how are those grants going to be calculated?
And can I just follow up that was my question? It's just, I know in the poll it said, oh, would be motivated if we got a $20,000 grant, and it's true, but we weren't given the cost of what all these other converting, to convert all those solutions were. So if it costs $70,000, $50,000, which is some of the numbers that were thrown out at previous meetings, that still would mean we'd have to out of pocket pay like $30,000, which it would be really difficult. So, $20,000 sounds generous, but until you just find out what the actual cost is. So I guess we'd need a little more information of what amount are we talking here?
Yeah, great question.
Christina, maybe I'll jump in.
Okay, go ahead, Stuart.
Because Senator DeCoit has to leave early, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you have any, comments about that, or any.
Not a problem, Stuart. And of course, House Bill 2195 is set for conference. We have to put the conferees on there, but though the funding amount would be determined within the conference on both committees in the House and Senate. Again, this is a pilot grant project. And just so you guys know, you're looking at statewide 87,900 cesspools. Yeah, the cost to replacement of an existing cesspool per system, if we were to factor 87,900 cesspools, is $1.75 billion. Yeah, I can appreciate the presentation that the WAI company has presented before us today, and as you can see, there are options on the table. These will be discussed within the conference committees, and again, contact your legislature, as myself and Representative Yamashita is here. Again, there are all different types of septics that can be used, and that is what we're here for, to see what is being offered on the table, not just what we're going to put up in funding wise, but again to whether or not it can be used as a ohana type of septic that can be sufficient to move waste through and conversions. Again, we have to remind ourselves, is the seepage that goes into our drinking water system, what is the cost towards that? Yeah, so those things are going to be discussed in conference based on this. And again, you're looking at a 2050 conversion, which is in 28 years. Again, we'd like to try and address that before 28 years and not to draw this out. As we know, there is seepage that is going within our drinking water system.
Yeah,
And
thank you so
I'll
much.
leave it at that.
Thank you so much for those comments, Senator. And another thing is, in the cesspool conversion working group, we were just discussing today the recommendations that we're going to be making, and there's a lot of agreement that they'll probably have earlier deadlines for areas where it is affecting drinking water. And just to bring that issue home, in Long Island, Suffolk County, New York, where they have the most cesspools in the country. We have the most per capita, but they have just in sheer volume the most. It's the pollutants from cesspools and septic systems have literally killed the shellfish industry there. It's collapsed because they can't eat what comes out of the Long Island Sound. And they have elevated rates, as Christina mentioned, of bladder cancer. And so we're talking about real issues here, but the question is a very, very solid one, is we have to find ways to help homeowners with these costs. We have to protect the health first. That's our biggest priority. But then the next is really to make sure that we don't pass this burden on to homeowners. And so, that's what I think we'll be working on with that bill and others that'll be coming along, and at the county levels also, and with this infrastructure funding. So maybe we should go to the next question. And also, I just want to remind you, we have John Estilla on the line, and he works with Ridge to Reefs and has done some of these conversions. So John, if you want to say a couple of quick words to introduce yourself, that would be great. I think you're gonna have to unmute yourself.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, hello, sorry about that.
okay.
Yeah, hello, how you doing? I'm John Estilla. I'm in Hali'i, Maui, and I work with Ridge to Reefs on piloting the Bioreactor Garden. In terms of, waste removal, we did a really good job with this pilot, and we could see this in some situations as a great alternative for people wanting to convert their cesspools. As far as cost goes, I see in the chat there's a lot of questions coming in regarding cost. We feel that this green alternative would be much cheaper than other DOH approved septic systems and wastewater systems, but it would truly be dependent on the site and location, and just the footprint of what the bioreactor can be placed on the property and the associated leach field and seepage pit. With this system, we try to get the cost down as much as possible by utilizing local materials and even recycling media for the actual media that goes inside the bioreactor, using such media as like wood chips from invasive trees. And we're going to be experimenting with using recycled glass as well to help lower the cost of the overall system. So if anyone has questions, feel free to shoot them on chat or by video, and I'll try my best to answer them. Thank you.
All right, thank you,
so much,
John.
John. Yeah.
So we have a lot of questions coming in. So I think to finish, there are a lot of questions coming in about cost, and that's maybe one thing that we can just give a little bit of an estimate about. It is really tricky, as John mentioned. It really depends on the site. So we often use kind of an average conversion estimate of about 35,000, but that can really vary a lot depending on the site conditions, which is why it's hard to give like this system costs this much money and this system costs 10,000 more. Like it really depends on the local conditions. So that is something that is a little bit tricky. So a couple questions came in about our programs, the upcoming programs to create more jobs in the wastewater industry. How do we get trained to be installers, inspectors, designers, etc.? So Stuart or Yoko, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, Stuart, would you like to?
Yeah, your voice is a little wavy. I don't know if it's just my computer or not, Yoko, but yeah, so we, as part of this earmark request funding, we're going to be working with the Hawaii community colleges, and Maui College was one of the leaders in this, to do training in different sectors of the wastewater field. And we're lucky that we have Steve Parabacoli on the line. He's taught, he's worked in Maui with wastewater treatment plant, and has also taught courses in education about wastewater issues. But we're hoping to create these jobs. We'll be rolling out more information. If you want to check out our website, WAI cleanwater.org, we will be posting information, or you can join our newsletter and we'll be sharing more information as that rolls out, because we're still trying to get the details from the senator's office, Senator Hirono's office, about the details of how that, when it's going to be rolled out, and that kind of thing. But it'll be happening in the community colleges. If you can help us spread the word, that would be great. Another question that Steve asked is, will the operation maintenance of ATUs be required to be overseen by a certified wastewater operator by DOH? Right now, DOH, they've said that they're kind of understaffed and underfunded. And so we think it'd be best to have these inspectors that are trained and certified by DOH, but not necessarily working through DOH, having third-party inspections. And I think it'll be a lot easier to do, so that we don't have to go, through DOH to do that. So that's I think as far as we can answer at that point. But Christina, I'll pass it back to you to get some other questions.
Sure. Thank you, Stuart. And also, I just wanted to mention, as far as learning when those learning opportunities will open up at the community colleges, definitely give us a follow on Instagram and LinkedIn, because we will be posting like crazy when that stuff comes up. We really want to get people involved. So make sure you follow us on social media, Facebook also. So yeah, we have Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. So connect with us and then you'll be in the loop. Next question we had is, if we have multiple cesspools on our property, do we have to convert each one? And
you want to take that one, or John?
I can do it. Is my voice still wavy?
it sounds like
good right now. Yeah.
All right. Must have just been me thinking about surfing. Yes. Every cesspool has to be converted eventually by 2050, but sometimes 2 cesspools can be converted to a single new system, or if you want to tackle them one by one, just because you convert one doesn't mean you have to do the other one right away. But if you want any site-specific tips, feel free to email us and we'll be glad to look into your specific situation.
Thank you, Yoko. Okay, the next question is, we still question the Department of Health designation of Upcountry Maui as a priority 1 area. The coastline is far more threatened. So I can talk about that a little bit. So the Department of Health priority 1 classifications have gone to only 2 areas. They've gone to Upcountry Maui and Kahului, and that is because Kahului on the east side of Oahu. And that is because those are areas with documented data that DOH has collected showing negative human health impacts. So that means the nitrate pollution in drinking water, which is associated with increased cancer risk. And if it gets much higher, if it gets to like above 10 milligrams per liter, it's currently seeing up to about 8. If it gets to above 10, you can start seeing what's called blue baby syndrome, which is a disease in young babies where they can't get enough oxygen to their extremities. So, these are very real health concerns. And then in Kahului, there's also a lot of documented reports of folks getting bad skin infections and things from the water there. That being said, I do really agree that there's a lot of areas of high concern on Maui for coastal areas as well. And at the time that the priority areas were designated, those coastal areas hadn't been assessed yet. There is a new prioritizations that kind of takes the rest of the areas that hadn't been assessed yet and figures out what priority level those are. And while those results are not quite finalized yet, I can tell you that there are definitely some areas of coastal Maui that are designated as priority 1 in that second round of assessments. So yes, we definitely care a lot about the marine ecosystem. I'm a coastal oceanographer. That's my passion for sure, is the nearshore water quality. And one of the areas I remember seeing is the whole area from Kihei south, that whole coastline was a pretty high risk area, high priority area, and a couple areas in West Maui as well. Let's see, we talked about costs already. So is there any research available on composting instead of dumping waste into water to carry it away?
Yeah, I think in terms of solid waste, we believe that turning it into biochar is the best way to go. Because not only does it reduce the volume, but it neutralizes the greenhouse gas emissions. And in terms of liquid, we believe that reusing it for irrigation is, especially in central Maui, which is so dry, it's a real great opportunity. So yes, we do not want to dump it. We know that it is a valuable resource, and cities like Singapore even take it up to drinking water standards, and we believe that that is the future.
Yeah. We have, especially, as we enter, more kind of severe droughts associated with climate change, we need to really, and the Red Hill incident has just made us realize just how precious water is. In Hawaiian culture, the word for wealth is vaivai, and it's just because water is so essential to our well-being. And so we really have to just be more and more cognizant of that as we move forward.
Yeah, thank you. It's always important to keep all of these conversations in the context of climate change and the differing rainfall and water budget that we might have in the future due to those changing environmental regimes. I realized I missed a question, so I'm sorry, I'm going to jump back up in the chat from DC, who asked about the Heili Maile Road. So it says, with massive new development along Heili Maile Road, Mahi Pono agriculture, and a large mixed housing project, what will the wastewater and sewage plant be? Does anyone want to talk a little bit about that area?
Did it say where would it be?
What would be the wastewater and sewage plan?
Oh, plan. Okay, I thought you said plant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
The good thing I can say is that new development in Hawaii has to abide by the newest laws. There's nothing grandfathered in. So injection wells, for example, not going to work. Injection wells are not allowed, new injection wells. So this will likely use very high level, maybe MBR level, which stands for membrane bioreactor, one of the highest levels of treatment there is, level treatment, and then using it for irrigation. And then the solids will most likely either be landfilled if we're not lucky, or they will be turned into biochar if we put in the work to make that happen. So VAI is not associated with that, but we obviously monitor all the development in the state, especially when it comes to wastewater. And we know that it'll be done to a high standard, especially on the liquid side.
And if any of you want to just speak up and ask a question or say a few comments, Senator DeQuoit or Representative Yamashita or Councilmember King, please feel free. I'll pass it over to Representative Yamashita.
Thank you. I'll just comment, Senator DeQuoit is right. The number is huge for us to convert everything statewide. And I think, one of the things at the end of the day is, wastewater is a county responsibility, but the state has been trying to help wherever we can. And the other part I wanted to comment on was that, you commented on this. once in a lifetime funding that's coming, but Build Back America and all the infrastructure funding and things like that. So what the legislature has done is one of the things that we plan to put in the budget is to have the money to have a plan on how we're going to go after many of these competitive grants. And we're actually in the process of contacting the county because a lot of this money goes directly to the county. So we want to work in conjunction with them to make sure that we go after this money and we take advantage of whatever we can. The other comment I wanted to make is that there are other opportunities to access USDA rural development money that currently exists that we don't take advantage of, that is actually cheaper than the state can do tax exempt general obligation bonds. And you can amortize over a longer period of time that we could put in systems of bigger systems and then utilize that type of funding. Because I think as your strategy as far as creating fees to do all that, I think that's a short-term fix. But long-term, I think we got to think about how all this is going to tie into every level of government, meaning I know Congress is looking at possibly looking at reinstating the SALT deductions. And if they do that, then it'd be more strategic to, instead of a fee, you add it to property tax, because if you did that, it becomes deductible, whereas a fee is not on your federal income tax. So those are some of the big picture strategies that I think everybody needs to, we need to consider and talk about. But it all is dependent upon what Congress does, and we just have to be cognizant of those moving parts that can actually be beneficial to the taxpayers of our communities. So we're looking at all of those things, right? Even the House bill is moving through right now. What is it? 2195. Right, it's a band-aid fix, right? It's just to infuse money to kind of take care of the problem, but it is not a long-term solution. So I think while what you talked about is good, I think we also have to look at it from how are we going to pay for it in a manner that is beneficial to everybody and fair to everybody. And to me, that's the long-term discussion that we need to have. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Stuart, I just wanted to weigh in on exactly what Representative Yamashita is saying. House Bill 2195, it doesn't apply to everybody, right? If you look at the makeup of the bill, it applies to low and moderate income property owners. Yeah, it also includes wine homelands, with of course the cost of upgrading and converting or connecting to cesspools. Yeah, and it has to be identified by the Department of Health as failing. So again, at this point, this bill goes into conference. No appropriations have been specified to date. But what about the other people? Yeah, because while you have to look at that, and this is why I think this is a good start, that we're having the conversation that, partnership is key. And again, I think the $1 million question is, what happens to those that cannot afford or does not fall within the adjusted gross income? Because there will be an adjusted gross income that is not set within this bill. Totally agree with what Rep. Yamashita is saying. It has to be beneficial to all. All too often we isolate, and legislature has been looking at, again, the future generations. Yeah, what will we leave? What will be the impact environmentally to the water system? And of course, the data needs to follow all of that, because the buy-in, right? And if you look at 4 years ago, when we started to pinpoint these areas, the question came up in the chat earlier, as you saw, all these areas along the beach side. Yeah, you have those that at that point had cesspools, and even if they converted into septic, the leach lines still showed that, we're still getting the overflow. Yeah. So I think as we continue to meet and we continue to have the conversation, that we have to look at all aspects of whether it be government and private entities and those grants that are out there based on the federal funds that were sent down, is do we have the manpower to go after these grants so that we can help all? Yeah, because as one individual said, you know, $20,000, like, I mean, the system itself depend on the usage, how big the dwelling is, or an apartment complex or condo. You're trying to figure out how many can we get into that, who pays the offset of all of these costs. Yeah, again, the impact to that water system. You know, we continue to have the conversation about this going forward, and this is why I think this venue you guys have going on tonight is very important, because we need to also hear from the community. We don't have the answers for everything, and I think as the solutions are thrown on the table, you know, we have done really good in taking that as we continue to work side by side here at the Capitol with our sheet on the House side and our other counterparts within the Maui delegation, because this is a priority. Environmental issues. So appreciate you folks having this tonight, and appreciate the community coming out and expressing themselves going forward, because it's going to cost. It's going to cost taxpayers.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, you know, for joining us and for the work you're doing at the Capitol. You know, we like to say there are no silver bullets, but they're just many arrows in our quiver. We're going to have to go about this in a number of ways. You know, from the federal point of view, there is a real emphasis on disadvantaged communities. And so I think that bill, HB 2195, is a good start, because we have to start somewhere. You're right that we do have to come up with, you know, solutions for you know, all homeowners, but we have to start somewhere. And the ones that are the worst cesspools that are failing, that people, there's no way they can afford it, it is a really good place to start. And I know the EPA, their regional administrator was in town recently, and they're very concerned about, they want to see Hawaii taking actions and moving forward. And so I think even the small steps at the beginning, as we go into, you know, major movements and bigger bills will be helped. We only have a couple minutes left. Christina, do you want to highlight any questions or comments?
Let's see. There's some comments about biochar that I think we've been answering in the chat. There's also a comment about some areas the plots aren't big enough for the septic or enhanced type septic systems. So I did put a note in the chat, but that's when the plot areas are really small, that's when we want to start looking at community type solutions where we do some piping to bring the waste away from the houses into a central area to treat the waste, whether that's like a neighborhood package plant or expanding nearby sewer, if that's an option. So yeah, it's definitely the size of the lot is definitely a consideration. And it looks like we have a hand up from Glenn.
Yes.
Yes, so I live in a sort of unique area where it's bordered on the lower end by Mahipono lands, where, you know, some type of wastewater return for our irrigation may work. And also the other boundary would be the back door to the Iolani corridor, where they do have sewer treatment. So is there any way for us to get involved with, you know, either party? Because I believe in some ways we would be a great project site in our neighborhood.
Yeah, if you want to reach out to us, we would definitely like to, you know, work with you. We're looking for communities that want to do this, because, you know, just in light of what Senator Coit and Representative Yamashita were saying, we think sanitation is a service model where you pay a little bit each month instead of having to front this huge cost up forward. We think this is a really good solution. It's much more efficient. It's more affordable for the community and individual homeowners. And in the face of sea level rise and flooding, which is not a problem in Upcountry Maui, but they're more secure. They're not going to have inundation and, you know, infiltration issues that you would get with normal sewer lines. So please feel free to reach out to us at info@WAI Clean Water, and we can talk about setting up meetings and doing presentations for your community.
Okay.
Yeah, appreciate that comment. And unfortunately, we're at time, and we really kind of want to respect everybody's time, but this is the beginning of a conversation. This is not the end. So if we can put it on that last slide, we want to thank all of our speakers for being here tonight. Our legislators, Senator Coit and Representative Yamashita, John Estilla, and Fal from Ridge to Reefs, and my WAI team, which is, they're just excellent at what they do, and they're very passionate about this topic. But again, this is the beginning of the conversation. Yoko, if we can move it to that last slide so it just has our contact info, that would be great. And we'd love for you to reach out to us and keep this conversation going, because there's a lot of room for innovation. And the last point I wanted to make was with what Christina was saying, and lots, especially in Upcountry Maui, they're too small or too steep. We also want to be able to reuse the cesspools for, kind of gray water and retrofit them so that we treat it before, but if there's not enough room for a leach field, we can use those cesspools. I think that's something that's going to need to happen. But again, I want to thank everyone who participated. We will be sending out the slideshow and links to the video recording. Please share it with your friends or any homeowners with cesspools. We also have something called the Potty Portal. We're big on poo puns here at WAI, and you can go on our website, and that's for homeowners who just want to know what kind of system they would need on their property, all the available kind of contractors, engineers, and options for your conversion. I also want to thank Anela and Uncle Kimokeo for starting us off with that beautiful Oli. And I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight, and we will be in touch. And we'll hope you'll be in touch with us. Mahalo.
Thank you, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Mahalo.
Aloha. All right. So,